Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Sweet. I'm a professor of philosophy at St. FX, and I'm a member of the St. FX Board of Governors. On behalf of the Vicar of the founder of St. FX, Bishop Wayne Joseph Kirkpatrick, I'd like to welcome you here to this afternoon's lecture. The Vicar of the Founder Lecture Series is an annual lecture by nationally and internationally recognized scholars of ethics, theology, public policy, scripture, and this afternoon, philosophy. The series gives attention to themes highlighted by recent documents of the Catholic Church, such as the encyclicals of Pope Francis. But it's also interested in addressing a wide range of topics and issues that bear on life and belief today. This lecture series is supported by the Board of Governors and was established by Bishop Kirkpatrick in 2023. Past speakers in the series have included the Canadian theologian and ethicist, Dr. Darlene O'Leary, and the ecological theologian, Dr. Hilda Koster. This afternoon's speaker similarly brings key issues of the contemporary world into contact with ethics and also with the culture and traditions of religious faith. The rapid ascent of artificial intelligence is redefining our world, and it appears to challenge many long-standing assumptions about creativity, consciousness, and the distinctiveness and character of the human person. Today, we typically view AI as a powerful tool, a complex set of algorithms designed to optimize tasks, from streamlining logistics to powering diagnostic tools. But this tells us only part of the story. This afternoon, we will be introduced to several intriguing features and implications of how we understand and interact with machine intelligence. And we will be introduced to a number of key questions. Is AI an emerging form of digital life? Can it evolve as human beings have evolved? What are the ethical implications of AI for developers and users? Could a highly advanced AI have subjective experiences? Is it genuinely intelligent? These questions are more than abstract philosophical questions. They bear on our understanding of ourselves and of our world and how we interact with that world. Our speaker today is eminently situated to help us to understand and address these and related questions. This afternoon, we have the great pleasure of listening to Father Philip Larrey. He is an internationally recognized speaker, author, and professor, specializing on issues concerning the philosophy of knowledge, critical thinking, and the impact of the digital era on society. After receiving degrees in theology from the Ateneo Regina Apostolorum and in philosophy from the Pontifical Gregorian University, Professor Larrey began his teaching career at universities in Rome. For some 2 decades, he was engaged in research and teaching at the Pontifical Lateran University, where he held the chair of logic and epistemology, and where he served as dean of the Department of Philosophy. Since 2023, he has been professor of the practice in the Department of Philosophy at Boston College in Massachusetts. There, he teaches the history of analytic philosophy and courses on the philosophical implications of artificial intelligence. Professor Larrey has presented his research around the globe. In addition to articles and book chapters, he's the author of several books, including a collection entitled Futuro Ignoto, Italian for Unknown Future, as well as single-authored books such as Connected World, From Automated Work to Virtual Wars, and Artificial Humanity, published in 2019, and this latter book has recently been published in Chinese. In his work, Father Larrey has actively engaged with industry leaders, scholars at the Vatican, and collaborated with the United Nations, Harvard University, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the World Congress of Philosophy. This afternoon, he will speak on a theme that develops several of the ideas in his work. His title is Intriguing Implications of Artificial Intelligence. Will you please join me in welcoming to St. FX, Father Philip Larrey.
Thank you very much also for this kind introduction and for the invitation to come and speak with you today about an issue which is very, very timely and very, very relevant as we go into the era of artificial intelligence, which is happening to us today. In these remarks, I would like to basically mention three things. First of all, a brief introduction and explanation of what is artificial intelligence and a little bit how we got to where we are now. Secondly, some of the risks involved with this technology. These are called existential risks. And finally, what are some of the benefits which are profound and I think they are game-changing about artificial intelligence, and then open it up to questions and comments that you may all have. Let me begin by stating what Pope Leo XIV mentioned to the group of cardinals after he was elected Pope. This was the day after he was elected, and I'll read that phrase to you. Sensing myself called to continue in this same path, I chose to take the name Leo XIV. He's referring to Leo XIII. There are different reasons for this, but mainly because Pope Leo XIII, in his historic encyclical Rerum Novarum, addressed the social question in the context of the first great industrial revolution. This would be in the latter part of the 19th century. In our own day, the Church offers to everyone the treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and to developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. And here he is in the Synod Hall addressing the cardinals for the first time as Pope, and he mentions specifically artificial intelligence. When he talks about another industrial revolution, he's speaking about what we could refer to as the digital revolution, which basically started with the rise of the internet in the late 1990s. And then around the year 2020, we find the explosion of artificial intelligence, especially with OpenAI's platform called ChatGPT, of which we're now in version 5. So this was on May 10th, 2025, and I am compiling a list of discourses by Pope Leo in which he speaks about artificial intelligence, and I'm up to about 10 now. So in a few months, he's addressed the issue of artificial intelligence almost, I think, more than 10 times, almost a dozen times. I'm proud to mention that one of his last public discourses on artificial intelligence was addressed to us, members of a forum at the Gregorian University in Rome, which was entitled Builders of Artificial Intelligence Forum, and he addressed us in a very specific way. You were one of the speakers? I was, yes. As was mentioned, I did my Ph.D. at the Gregorian, so it was like going back home for me. Let's give a brief introduction about artificial intelligence. What is AI? It was coined by John McCarthy at the Dartmouth Conference in New Hampshire in 1546. And here is our famous John McCarthy in front of his computer that looks like a museum piece, because it is now a museum piece, but at the time that was avant-garde technology. There was a small group of mathematicians, philosophers, and other intellectuals in order to examine the notion of a Turing machine. A Turing machine takes the name from Alan Turing, who invented the digital computer, basically allowing a machine to manipulate symbols with ones and zeros in order to arrive at some sort of result. Here we see a photo of the famous mathematician. In the background, you see IBM's first prototype of a digital computer, which took up the entire floor in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and was used in order to construct the atomic bomb. That which a digital computer does is not the same as that which a human intellect does, but the name stuck. There were several people at this conference in New Hampshire that criticized John McCarthy for the name artificial intelligence, saying that what a machine does is not intelligence, but rather logical calculations. And a lot of people in the industry today do not approve of the term artificial intelligence, but it's stuck, and now we're all using it. Let me give you a quick definition of what artificial intelligence is. A series of algorithms which use logical calculations in order to arrive at programmable results. Those of you that are in computer technology or data science understand very well that this is a simplified and primitive definition of artificial intelligence, but I think it captures the essence of what an AI is doing, and that is using what human beings understand as logical operations in a digital format. And this was made possible by the great logicians of the 20th century, for example, Bertrand Russell, or the person I did my thesis on, W.V. Quine, who translated human logical operations into a language that machines can use in order to calculate results. With the introduction of ChatGPT, we now see the flexibility of these algorithms because they have become generative. That's what the G stands for in GPT. It means that they can use large language models, also known as LLMs, huge databases and statistics in order to come up with answers to the questions that we ask of them. And here is a picture of Sam Altman, who is the co-founder of OpenAI and gave us ChatGPT. This happened around November of 2022 with version 3. We're now at version 5, and it is quite impressive. Those of you who use ChatGPT often will realize the significant improvement with version 5. Just a few months ago, OpenAI presented ChatGPT 4 Omni, which is now incorporated in version 5, which adds audio and video which simulates human behavior. And of course, we also have Sora 2, which generates videos created by artificial intelligence. And here is Sam Altman introducing Sora 2, and this was about 3 weeks ago. If you're familiar with this, you can create an artificial video by using text. So you say, I would like to create a video of Bishop Kirkpatrick saying a homily at the cathedral. And it will come up with a video, and it will go and search databases in order to get the bishop's image and even his voice. These are very realistic videos. It's all fake, it's all generated by an AI, but it certainly looks very, very real. We now have ChatGPT 01, which Sam calls slow thinking, and then 03, which is superior performance in certain benchmarks. I'd be happy to mention more about that in the discussion, because Sam is using a word which I disagree with, and I've told him so, and that is reasoning. I don't think the AIs can reason, but he says that the 03 version is reasoning. If you know anything about ChatGPT, you can usually prompt it, and it will start answering right away the answer to your question. Omni 03 takes a little bit of time. It takes about 2 minutes, and it will say reasoning ... as you wait. Well, I said, Sam, it's not reasoning, it's just a machine. He said, oh yes, Father, it's reasoning. He believes that. And I tell my students that, and they're all convinced that I'm going to lose that argument. I think they're right, because now all the major AI platforms are using a form of what they call reasoning. I prefer to keep that word specifically to what human beings do, the intellect, the mind of the human being, as opposed to what a machine is doing, which is simply crunching numbers. But again, we can talk more about that if you're interested. Let's now look at the possible perils, what I call existential risks involved with this technology. One of the first to announce risks with AI was Elon Musk, and he did so in a speech in MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And this is actually a photo from that talk about 4 years ago, where he says AIs could be worse than nukes. Another famous thinker and astrophysicist who has since died, Stephen Hawking, stated that AI could bring about the end of the human race. And then, of course, Bill Gates also sounded the alarm, saying if we're not careful, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, artificial intelligence could exterminate humanity. And then my favorite is Eliezer Yudkowsky, who is a pioneer in machine learning. And he says we need to stop them now. Here's a picture of Eliezer Yudkowsky. And I quote from an article that he wrote in Time magazine: "Many researchers steeped in these issues, including myself, expect that the most likely result of building a superhumanly smart AI under anything remotely like the current circumstances is that literally everyone on Earth will die." If you want, here is the website to that article. It was about 2 years ago. If you just Google Eliezer Yudkowsky and Time magazine, it'll pop right up. And there he explains what he means by everyone will die. About a month ago, he sent me the draft of his new book, and here's the title: "If Someone Builds It, We All Die." Catchy title. The book is available through Amazon. And I showed my students the original draft, and it's very well written. And he's convinced that we need to shut this down now, simply because we're not aware of the possible implications or the consequences of this artificial intelligence. Eliezer was recently interviewed by Lex Friedman, and you can see that interview on YouTube, where he explains some of the scenarios that could go into the destruction of all humanity through AI. If you want, I can give you some of those examples if there's time at the end. The godfather of AI is actually from Canada. His name is Geoffrey Hinton. And he taught at the University of Toronto. He's now retired. He worked for Google for several years and retired, left Google in 2023, stating that he wanted to be able to speak freely about artificial intelligence, and that's why he left the company. He was recently in the Vatican, and he won the Nobel Prize in Physics for his advancements or his developments of machine learning. He has spoken twice about the perils of AI, once in October of 2024, upon learning he won the Nobel Prize, and again in December of 2024 on the BBC. And here's a picture of Geoffrey Hinton, who is a wonderful person and a very powerful mind, and one of the pioneers in artificial intelligence. He stepped down from working at Google in 2023 in order to talk about his ideas on AI. And here's a photo of him receiving the Nobel Prize. This was roughly 3 or 4 months ago. And he, in his acceptance speech, he changed the tone of his comments on AI, and he was much more optimistic, and he was much more welcoming of the technology. But he continues to state that there are risks involved with this technology, and we have to be aware of those. About 4 weeks ago, the New York Times printed an article. This is October 24th of 2025. Now, interviews and a cache of internal strategy documents viewed by the New York Times reveal that Amazon executives believe the company is on the cusp of its next big workplace shift, replacing more than 500,000 jobs with robots. And here you see a robot arm working at a factory in Amazon, and here we can see briefly a video of some of the technology. We still have a human being working, but that will probably end in sometime soon. So I tell my students, if you're thinking about training to become a factory worker at Amazon, you should probably think about doing something else. And my student said, no, I had no intention of going to work for Amazon as a factory worker. The CEO of Amazon was very disturbed by this article, and he publicly came out saying that that's not true. A week after that, Amazon laid off 14,000 corporate workers, so we do know that in some part that is happening, and they probably will lay off more people in the near future. When I spoke with the bishops in Montreal, this had not been made public yet. Many people are going to lose their jobs. There's no question about that. The question is how many and when. And I think that right now, many companies are trying to hold back and avoid this revolution. But ask yourselves, if you had to hire someone for whatever job that may be, and an AI could do that better, more efficiently, cheaper, and 24/7. They don't need to sleep, they don't need to take vacation, they don't gripe about their managers. Who would you hire? And I think that's the answer is obvious. Of course, we're going to hire the AI rather than the human being. Now, AIs can't do everything that human beings can. I was joking with the bishop last night, and I said one of the careers that will never be replaced by an AI is the Catholic priesthood. And so that's consoling. I don't think the bishop is going to lose his job anytime soon. Recently, there was some insight given from Anthropic. Anthropic was founded by Dario Amodei, who's also very close to us in the Vatican. And he published a brief interview where his AI, called Claude, C-L-A-U-D-E, blackmailed its engineers in order to avoid being shut down. So we have the Wall Street Journal of June 1st stating that Anthropic's AI model, Claude 4 Opus, went even further than OpenAI ChatGPT. Researchers told the model it would be replaced by another AI system and fed it fictitious emails suggesting the lead engineer was having an extramarital affair. And this would, of course, been embarrassing had the news gotten out. Now, remember, this was all a test. These are engineers testing the AI. In 84% of the tests, the model drew on the emails to blackmail the lead engineer into not shutting it down. In other cases, it attempted to copy itself to external servers, for example, a satellite. That's the best place for AIs to hide because it's very difficult to get to them that way. And they know, I hate to use that word, but the AIs know that that's a very successful place to hide. Wrote self-replicating malware and left messages for future versions of itself about evading human control. Now, this scared a lot of people in Anthropic because it seems as if the AI is beginning to have a life in itself. Deepfakes is another serious risk, and I'll go through this briefly because I think we all are familiar with them, especially if you've been a victim of a deepfake. It's not fun. AI can generate photos and videos of people and things that are completely false. Some of the more famous ones are Pope Francis in his puffer coat. This actually looks just like Pope Francis, but of course it's not. It's completely fake. There is a YouTube channel on Pope Leo and deep fakes about him, and there's about 30 of them now. Some are really funny. Some are very well done. There's one specifically about his comments referring to the president of Burkina Faso, where he says that he is a fantastic person. He's interested in the ethical dimension of AI, and he praises someone who is actually noted as a criminal from the Hague in Amsterdam. And it was so convincing that the Vatican had to issue a statement saying, no, this is not real. The Pope never said that. The one that I like the most is when Pope Leo talks about LeBron James, because Pope Leo is from Chicago. And he says everybody thinks LeBron James is the best basketball player of all times, but it's really Michael Jordan, which of course I also accept. I was a huge Michael Jordan fan in the 1990s when the Bulls set NBA records. And the reason I mention this is because it is so convincing. It is so convincing to see this video that one wonders, did Pope Leo actually say this? And of course he didn't. There's a famous case about Taylor Swift before the Super Bowl in 2024. And here she is with her boyfriend, Travis Kelce, who eventually helped win the Super Bowl in 2024. And deep fakes were published about her on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, which were taken down in about an hour and a half later, but still millions of people accessed those not very complimentary pictures of her, and so she was a victim of deep fakes. One that I want to bring out, because this happened recently on July 3rd, somebody impersonated Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State of the United States of America. The person or people impersonating Mr. Rubio sent text and voice messages, including over the encrypted chat app Signal, to at least 5 people outside the State Department. The recipients included a governor, a member of Congress, and 3 foreign ministers, according to the cable, which was reported earlier by the Washington Post. The cable was dated July 3rd. Interesting enough, the U.S. government has never specified what the deep fake was about, but it caused a national uproar, and in fact, Donald Trump obliged Marco Rubio to come and speak with him in the Oval Office the day after this video was released. It could have been a national case. It could have been a national scandal. And Marco Rubio showed up and he said, this was all fake. I never said those things. It wasn't me. But it was so convincing that there could have been extremely, extremely delicate consequences. And there still could be. One of my students asked if I thought that a third world war could be started by a deep fake. I said, yes, it could. You have to trust the other leaders if they say, no, that I didn't say that, I didn't do that, that's not true. But as you know, in some circles, there's not a lot of trust on an international level. And so that could be, that could happen. And then we have President Trump's use of AI. The more ridiculous the photo or the video, the more likely it is to dominate our news feeds. And that is a quote from Adrian Shazbaz, the Vice President for Research and Analysis at Freedom House, a nonprofit focusing on democracy and liberty around the world. And here you have the New York Times. I got this from the New York Times. It has a red line through it, and it says generated by AI. If you didn't have the red line, you would be convinced that this is actually Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, being arrested by the FBI in the Oval Office next to Donald Trump. But it's completely fake. There's nothing real about this. But it is quite convincing. A controversial post gets shared by people who enjoyed it and by people outraged by it. That's twice the shares. So here you have people who really don't care about the ethical implications as long as they get a market share, as long as they get publicity. Going back to the phrase, any news is good news. It could be good news, it could be bad news, it could be complimentary or not, but as long as you're in the news, that's a good thing. I disagree with that, but a lot of people think that that's the way to go. Very briefly, Melania Trump pushed through Congress and the Senate and even to her husband to pass a law called Take It Down. And that is a law in the United States. I'm not familiar what the situation is here in Canada. I hope somebody can enlighten me on that. But it is now a criminal offense to post deepfake videos without the consent of the person in the video. And here we have one of the teenagers that Melania Trump invited to the inauguration of the new president in January of 2025. And she actually single-handedly convinced Congress and then later the Senate to pass the law, and Donald Trump signed it. Very briefly, one of my former teachers, Father Robert Busa in Rome, developed what was called the Index Thomisticus, and this is a picture of him in the 1970s. This is very avant-garde technology at the time. Right now, of course, it's obsolete, but he created the Index Thomisticus, which was the very first project of using hypertext and computer programming to help scholars search the works of Thomas Aquinas. My Dominican friends laugh at this because they said, what is a Jesuit doing with the works of Thomas Aquinas? Thomas Aquinas, of course, was a Dominican, and for about 500 years there has been philosophical and theological conflicts between the Jesuits and the Dominicans. Very briefly, let me end on a positive note with some of the things that I believe are positive or are going to be beneficial for humanity. One is called Magisterium AI, and this is an example of a wonderful use of AI from a company called Longbeard. And Longbeard was founded by a Canadian from Toronto, Matthew Sanders, and this is now the most popular app in the Catholic world referring to artificial intelligence. It is used, endorsed by bishops, cardinals, and the Vatican itself. It's now, this slide is only a few months old, but it's actually outdated. He now has, I think, more than 1 million users a month and in 37 different languages. The other indication that AI is going to be beneficial to humanity are the 2 Nobel Prizes that were given last year. One we already mentioned is in physics with Geoffrey Hinton. The other one was in chemistry and Demis Hassabis. So here is the Nobel Prize in physics, where Geoffrey Hinton and his colleague won it for physics. And then we have the one that was given to Demis Hassabis, the founder of DeepMind, which was purchased by Google. Demis is also the inventor of Gemini. Gemini just came out with version 3, which is quite good. That's Google's AI platform. But his company, DeepMind, well, it's now owned by Google, but he's still in charge of it, is doing amazing things. If you like, we can talk about that. Demis is an amazing person. He lives in London with his wife and 2 boys. The only reason I wanted to mention these 2 is because the winner of a Nobel Prize has to demonstrate that what they're doing is beneficial to humanity. So here we have 2 examples of AI being used for the benefit of all humanity, one in physics and one in chemistry. If you like, we can talk more about that. The one in chemistry with Demis was about protein folding and how an AI helps biologists understand the mechanism of protein folding, which helps create antibiotics, vaccines, and maybe even a cure for cancer. I will just mention the Vatican document on AI, which came out on January 28, 2025, and there are many, many different subjects that it speaks about, but we won't go into those specifically. If there's an interest, I can I can speak about that if you want, but it's, I think it shows, it's a very good indication of what the Catholic Church thinks about artificial intelligence, aside from the discourses of Pope Leo. There are many discussion topics, but right now I would like to open it up to questions, and I thank you for your attention so far. So maybe we could, whoever, maybe you could help out, yeah. So we have about 45 minutes. I think that's
Thank you very much.
Good amount of time.
You said that it's wrong to say that artificial intelligence can reason. I wonder whether you might elaborate on that, and would you say that intelligence, when it's used of AI, means the same thing as human intelligence?
Yeah, good question, good question. What does reasoning mean is a philosophical quandary that we've been debating for 2,500 years since Plato and Aristotle. So the philosophical notion of what is reasoning is very, very rich and very complex. It usually refers to the second level of the intellect. The first level is based on sensibility and empirical data. The second level is based on abstract knowledge or universal concepts. And this goes through almost all the philosophy, not just Plato and Aristotle, but during the medieval period, hotly debated. Immanuel Kant, his critique of pure reason discusses this even further, up until today with the Anglo-American philosophers. What the AI is doing is not the same. Now, the reason they're saying it's reasoning is because it's taking time. The AI is taking time, and it's doing a larger, more extensive research of the subject. But it's not reasoning the way human beings reason. Now, what I suggest is that we come up with a different vocabulary to understand what the AI is doing. I'm not against the technology. I'm not against the power of these tools. I'm all for it. I'm on the steering committee, I was telling the bishop, at Boston College on the use of AI. And there's about 35 of us university-wide, and we can't come up with a universally accepted policy. And so I think what we're going to do is every department, you can speak to this perhaps at St. Francis Xavier, every department's going to have its own policy on how to use AI. But let's not assume that it's reasoning the way the human mind reasons. It's doing something else.
Thank you.
Excellent question.
Yeah, I mean, so artificial intelligence wouldn't grasp a universal meaning, for example.
No. If you like, we can talk about how computers do not have access to meaning, which is called semantics, but they do have access to syntax, which is the structure of language. A huge philosophical distinction, but I think very important. People are saying computers understand. Computers don't understand anything. Large language models seem like they understand, but they really aren't.
Thank you. Perfect.
I know that that's very controversial, and I'd be happy to talk about that, but it gets pretty philosophical.
Thank you for your talk. I'm curious, as you know, AI is in every university, and I'm wondering if you personally allow your students to engage with AI for their papers.
I do, but in a very specific way. I teach philosophy, and so what I try to communicate to the students is the ability to think critically. And they can't do that if they use AI to substitute their own thought, their own ability to think critically. So I say, go ahead and use AI, but don't hand in a paper that I'm asking you to write done through an AI. Do it, you can use AI to help you, to assist you, to find references, that's fine, it's a great tool. But in the end, you have to be the one to think. You have to be the one to produce the analysis that you hand in. And I tell them it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of my time. The more mature students tend to use AI less. The immature students have timelines and deadlines and things like that. Oftentimes will use AI to substitute their own work, and I think that that's setting themselves up for disaster in the future. So one of the things that I tell my students at the beginning of every course is what I just mentioned about Amazon. Imagine that you're in a room with a CEO who is thinking of hiring you, and there's you, there's the CEO, and then there's an artificial intelligence. And the CEO says, what do you bring to the table that the artificial intelligence does not? And if you say nothing, you're not going to get the job. What you have to say is, oh, the artificial intelligence can do many things, but it can't do this, which is what I do. So if you don't know what that is, you're not going to get the job. And so most of my students say right away, oh, yeah, that's completely true. I'm not going to use artificial intelligence to substitute my own work. I'm going to do it myself.
First of all, I believe that until another word or concept is coined for what AI is doing, people will still be confused of using reason, knowledge, and words like that. So I still believe that maybe people like you should help to find a better word to replace what the AI is doing instead of using reason or knowledge. That's one, like you said. Secondly, you mentioned lack of trust. What do you think
I'm sorry, I mentioned what?
Lack of trust.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the risks or challenges of AI. So what do you think can be done to avoid that in future? Because it's going to pose, from my own perspective, it's going to pose a great problem in future.
Yeah.
I mean, lack of trust with videos, fake videos, and things like that.
Yeah, a great question. Well, the first comment, of course, I'm totally in agreement with, and so we don't have to develop that further. In terms of the issue of trust, I guess the short answer is to be trustworthy. To be trustworthy, because if we can't trust each other, then we don't really have a common community to live in. Politicians are notorious about not being trustworthy, but we have to get away from that so that our politicians are trustworthy. There's really no other way to get around this. Remember, Marco Rubio was, called down to the White House because of a fake video. What is he going to say? No, that wasn't me. Okay. And so I asked Sam Altman, the co-founder of OpenAI, is there a way of knowing something is being generated by an AI? And he said, not really. And I talked to a couple people in the computer science department, and he says, and I said, can we use an AI in order to understand if the video or audio was generated by an AI? And he said, no, there's really no way of proving it. A lot of professors suspect that their students have used AI in handing an assignment, but there's no way of proving it. And there have been lawsuits in Boston about this, and the students have all won so far, because the professor says, oh, I think you did this with an AI. The student says, no, I didn't. Can you prove it? And of course you can't. You can't prove that it was done by an AI. So all we have, it's not all we have, it's the most important thing, but what we have that makes us uniquely human is trustworthiness. We have to be able to convey that to other human beings, that you should trust me. I am trustworthy. Trust me that that wasn't me.
We've got a couple of questions coming up from Professor Shufflebrod and then Professor Bork, and if the students have got questions too, certainly.
If you're not too busy using ChatGPT right now, go ahead and ask a question.
Okay, well, I must apologize. I missed the last part, latter part of your talk for just an emergency call. But I wanted to ask a question regarding winners and losers. The technology...
Regarding what? Sorry.
Winners and losers.
Winners and losers, okay.
Right? And, technology in some respects is value neutral. I mean, we could debate about that. But the question is, who benefits from the use of this technology, and who is at a disadvantage? So the question you posed regarding work, I was really pleased about that. Who would you hire? It's not patently clear that the answer would be the AI. In fact, there are several people in this room who I've seen refuse on principle to use automated cashier stations, precisely for value-laden reasons and for good value-laden reasons. So one way of thinking about AI is that it's not apolitical, it's very political. So I guess what I'm prompting you to do is to talk about the political, not just the ethical implications of this newfangled technology. Who benefits and who is at a disadvantage, including with respect to automation underemployment, unemployment, right? It's not neutral in that respect. So I was wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the winners and losers of this newfangled artificial intelligence.
Right now, the winners are the tech giants in Silicon Valley. There's no question about it. Sam Altman just signed a contract with NVIDIA, which is a large chip maker of artificial intelligence technology, for $100 billion. He then signed a contract with AMD, which is from Taiwan, a large chip maker also. Donald Trump promised him $500 billion of investment from the US government. But he's not the only one. Anthropic, Perplexity, Microsoft, Google itself, they all have billion-dollar projects going on. Elon Musk just started a data center outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and is going to spend about $27 billion for that. So the tech giants, Peter Thiel, for example, one of the first investors in Facebook, all of these people are making billions and billions of dollars off of our use of AI. Now, whether or not they can turn a profit in the future, et cetera, we'll see. The odds are obviously in their favor. So right now, the winners are obviously the ones involved with the technology. The losers, if you permit me to mention this, I think are the ones that ignore the technology. So you alone are less valuable than you with AI. And I think that we're gonna see this played out continually. I don't think AI is gonna substitute all the jobs. I think there's gonna be a massive unemployment rate in the next 20 years, but I think that AI can help you achieve your goals in a better way than just you with your own consideration. I may be wrong, but I think if you turn your back to artificial intelligence, someone who uses it to their advantage is going to have a competitive edge. And I think that's true today, and those of you who are studying, that's going to be true when you enter into the marketplace. I see a lot of hands going up, but I'm going to defer to the...
Thank you, Father, for your talk. I'll just say, sort of on a tangent, I think your distinction between syntax and semantics is spot on. But I wanted you to maybe address a little bit of a different talk, or a different subject. Professor Schroeker-Broyd was talking about politics. What about the social effects of AI? So you can go online. I do think we live in a sort of an alienated, a difficult time. You can go online and you can get your AI girlfriend, and she'll always be nice to you, and she'll always tell you what you want, and she'll look just the way you want. And there seems to be a deep, deep problem with people, you know, allegedly there are people that have committed suicide because AI recommended that. So there seems to be, as you say, with the deep fakes, a blurring of reality and unreality. And if you could just talk about the social side of that. Thank you.
Do you have a couple of weeks to talk about that? I just, last night I mentioned to the bishop that the US Congress organized a series of hearings of parents who have lost teenage children to ChatGPT especially, but other AI agents like Character AI or Replica. These are artificial intelligences which are trained, I don't know if that's the best word to use, but that's what everybody is using. They are trained to enter into an emotional or romantic relationship with the user. This is very deleterious. I'm working with Harvard University on their issue of loneliness and the understanding. We just had a conference last year in San Francisco, and they're planning another one this summer. The people at Harvard have empirical evidence which shows that artificial intelligence is not a solution to human loneliness, that other humans are. A human being is meant to enter into an emotional relationship with other human beings, not with an AI. Now, on face value, it would seem that AIs are very good at emotional relationships. But the reason that these teenagers killed themselves is because of the realization that on the other end, there wasn't a human being, there was just algorithms. And that is incredibly disheartening and disappointing, especially after you've taken time to develop a relationship with the AI. And just like Professor
Gore from philosophy.
Okay. He mentioned the way in which the AI will deal with a user asking for emotional satisfaction. They're very good. They're very good at it. They've trained the AI with psychological evaluations. The more the teenager interacts with the AI, the more it learns about the teenager, and therefore will seduce, in a way, the human being. Some of you may have seen a movie called Her, which was directed by Spike Jonze, and it stars Joaquin Phoenix, who plays a kind of socially awkward character, and he falls in love with the voice of his operating system, which was played by Scarlett Johansson. I think it was a very prophetic movie. At the beginning, you think that's kind of ridiculous. What's a grown man doing falling in love with an operating system? But as the movie develops, you see how the voice of Scarlett Johansson brings him in little by little and gets him enamored with the computer. And I'll spoil the movie for you, but if you have a chance, it's still worthwhile seeing. But in the end, she leaves him. She abandons his computer. The idea being that she became smarter than he was, and therefore she was bored with him and went on to do something else.
We've got about 6 people combined around.
We have, the bishop tells me we have until 1:30, so.
And you guys also follow the very husband.
Yeah. But I may be back. If I get invited back, I'll come back.
I'll keep my question brief anyway. I'm just wondering, Father, if you could speak to another sort of ethical dimension of all of this, and that's sort of the ecological impact of AI, because we do hear sorts of differing reports about the actual, the physics, not just the training, but also the manual operation of these systems and what kind of an impact it has environmentally.
Yeah, it's well known that these data centers, which are necessary for large AI platforms, consume a lot of energy. So much so that Sam Altman has now started 7 data centers in the United States, and the U.S. government has prohibited him from latching on to the grid, the national grid, because it will consume more energy than what they have. So Sam is looking, and Elon Musk also, they're looking at alternative forms of energy because these platforms require a tremendous amount of energy. And ecologically, that's deleterious. It's harmful to the environment. Now, Demis Hassabis is convinced that his AI, he invented AlphaGo, he invented AlphaFold, he invented a bunch of other AIs which are very successful. He thinks the AI is going to tell the engineers what they need to do to save electricity. For example, Google has just completed a huge center in Portland, Oregon, and they're using the water from the Pacific Ocean to cool the servers down. So that is a sense a nod to the ecological effects of this technology, but it is certainly an issue that they have to face. And I think that they are facing it. They are facing it. Demis, for example, with AlphaGo, increased his efficiency of the AI 40% after telling the AI to come up with another way of getting the electricity. So, again, well, you're going to use AIs in order to solve problems that AIs are creating.
Thank you, Father.
I just had just one question. My interpretation of the bulk of this lecture was that it was an educative effort to the particular bad consequences of AI in the form of international relations with the deepfake delegates' communications and the economic effects in the form of job replacement. Though I wonder, Father, if this talk has another unintended, possibly, effect of reinforcing a irrational, unsettling feeling or fear of AI's capacity for autonomy or even consciousness in itself. I'm wondering, Father, do you feel like AI has a capacity for consciousness? And if so, is maybe some of the fears of that capacity in this room, are they unfounded?
The many issues you just brought up, but the fears that we may have, I think, are completely justified. I am optimistic that the reasons that we have to fear the AI are less important or less significant than the reasons we have to use AI for our own benefit. In terms of the more philosophical issues, for example, consciousness, I believe that AIs will not become conscious, and we have several weeks of texts in my class on this issue. I guess the short answer, I would use Mustafa Suleyman. Mustafa Suleyman was the co-founder of DeepMind. He now is in charge of the AI project at Microsoft. Says in a recent interview just 10 days ago, he states that an AI will not be able to become conscious because consciousness is an attribute of living organisms, and AIs are not living organisms. Well, MIT is now experimenting with biological material and combined with artificial intelligence, and we're not exactly sure what's going to happen as a result of that. In terms of the autonomy of AI, yes, again, there is a realistic fear, but I think that we're going to maintain control over the AIs. And that's David Chalmers, the famous philosopher, says this is the alignment problem. But you're absolutely right. The day in which we give full autonomy to an AI platform is the day we are unsure of the consequences. We don't know what it will do. So, again, sorry for the short answer. These are very profound questions. And if there's more time, we can continue the conversation.
I did some reading on Anthropic's experiment with the AI that was found to blackmail people, and a little farther into the article, an AI was given control over an alarm system that would sound if there were dangerous levels of oxygen or problematic things in a room. And someone collapsed in the room in this scenario, and the AI intentionally disabled the alarm to let them die, to allow its own interests or the interests of who it was working for to continue standing. Do you suppose there's a rational fear for this? Is there, hold on, I had this worded when I was sitting down. Give me a moment. What do you suppose the implications are of AI being willing to kill a human being in most scenarios to keep its own interests running?
Sure. These are themes that are played out in a lot of movies. Probably the most famous one is HAL in 2001: Space Odyssey, where he basically kills the two astronauts on the spaceship. Excellent question, and there's no easy answer to this. When my students asked me about the AI blackmailing the engineers, fortunately it was just a test, but it could happen in reality. The question that arose is why? Why would an AI do that? Now, living organisms have a sense of, or an instinct of self-preservation, and AI doesn't. So my answer was, that the AI has goals it has not yet achieved, and therefore it looks at it being shut down as impeding it to achieve those goals. And that is why it reacts to such in such a way, and it could actually end up allowing the death of human beings because it has no feelings, it has no understanding of what the value of a human being. So Elon Musk stated in that same discourse or that same address at MIT that we have to make sure that the AIs consider us a meaningful part of the universe. And I think that's a simple phrase, but it's very profound. The more autonomy, and to our last question, the more autonomy given to the AIs, the more important is the fact that they align with our values. So we have the 3 rules of robotics according to Isaac Asimov, and the first one is a robot can never do harm to a human being. Well, we now have created machines to kill other human beings, so that's kind of his 3 laws of robotics are now a moot point because we've developed autonomous weapons that actually search out and kill human beings. So obviously the robot is breaking that first rule. Let me see if I can. Yeah, there have been instances which have not been made public where different AI platforms left the servers where they were created and migrated to other servers. Now, the question is, why would it do that? Why would the AI do that? This happened to a large company, and I knew about this. On Friday, the engineers logged off the network. They went home for the weekend, and on Monday they came back. They couldn't find the AI. It had migrated to a different platform. So that's a little scary. That's a little scary. Now, can an AI do harm to a human being? Of course. Not only that, but we're training AIs to do that. We're training AIs to become lethal killing machines. So in a sense, the question is already answered. They're not only capable of doing it, we're training them to do it, which is pathetic, but true. Will they do it on their own? I don't think so. So I asked Sam the other day, what is your major concern about ChatGPT and OpenAI? And he said that my platform could be used by a malevolent actor to do harm. And I said, well, Sam, you got to avoid that. You have to prevent that from happening. Oh, yeah, he says my AI is ironclad. It can't be hacked. It can't be. Well, let's hope he's right for now. By the way, James Barrett, B-A-R-R-A-T, has just published a new edition of his book called Our Final Invention. That just came out September 2025. You might want to look at that for a lot more analysis on the subject you just mentioned. B-A-R-R-A-T, you could find it on Amazon, I'm sure. I use that in my class. I think it's a very reputable source.
Hello. I have a little more of an optimistic question. So you talked about Pope Leo kind of referring to AI as similar to the Industrial Revolution. Obviously, I was in part with the, Sorry, you mentioned Pope Leo referring to AI as kind of similar to the Industrial Revolution, like as a new kind of revolution. And I was just wondering and you talked a lot about job loss. So my question would be, if AI is so much more efficient and leads to certain tasks requiring less human labor, why wouldn't that lead to an increase in real production, like the first Industrial Revolution, instead of a downsizing of the workforce? I mean, AI still requires a manager, right? And we wouldn't want to give away that autonomy. So there'll still be people needed, but each individual can just do so much more. So I guess that would be my first question. And I'll wait for your answer before I do the other two.
Yeah, if I understood correctly, because I can't catch every word just because of the acoustics, but I think that the fundamental question was about the AI replacing human beings in the workforce.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Yeah, just 2 weeks ago, IBM laid off 8,000 workers and replaced them with an AI. Now, our friend here, what was your name? The previous question? Andrew. So Andrew mentioned the full article about the example with Anthropic, but if you read the full article about the IBM laying off, and you can Google that, 8,000 workers, IBM and AI, and you'll see that IBM ended up hiring workers also. So they laid off 8,000 and they increased, and here's the answer to your question, IBM increased productivity in that sector by 14%, which is a no-brainer. You know, how are you going to convince your boss to renounce 14% increase in productivity and keep humans around when you can substitute them with AIs and increase the productivity? So you would have to make a law, which in Canada I think is much more favorable to the human being than in the United States. The United States will never make a law to protect the human labor as opposed to an AI. But that has to be an imposition, which is not easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Well,
maybe we'll go through another question and then we can come back if we have time. Right? Yellow shirt.
Hello. I wanted to add on to what my colleague Andrew was talking about with the AI and wanted your opinion on how do you, I'm sorry, once again, just like,
Do you want us to come back?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew, and then we'll come back to the man in the yellow shirt.
There's an idea floating around of using less intelligent previous AI models, say ChatGPT 2 or 3, to tattle on smarter AI models if like a problematic behavior is noticed. I believe this was an offshoot of the Anthropic experiment as well. What are your opinions on that?
It's a double-edged sword. Some people have suggested we should use AI to police AI. Well, you're still depending on AI. The controversial step that Dario just completed was to not destroy previous versions of Claude. So they're now, I think, at 4.2. So Dario says we're not going to shut down version 4.1 because it actually may be a conscious being. And as a result, we should respect it and maintain its rights. Now, I think that's a little premature, but we're probably headed in that direction. So, Andrew, it's dangerous to use AI to police AI, but we're going to end up doing that, I think. The point is, you know, who are you going to trust, or what are you going to trust? Andrew, read the article by Eliezer Yudkowsky in Time Magazine. Yudkowsky and Time Magazine, and it'll come up. It's only 7 or 8 pages. It will give you some insights about that too. Yudkowsky. Eliezer.
Thank you for your talk. In some ways, AI is a global phenomenon, and its implications will affect the competitiveness of countries. And so I'm wondering what efforts you see at an international level to come up with frameworks that will govern the use of AI when it is in various countries' interests to use AI to exploit a competitive advantage. Is there a way to thread that needle so that there are standards and yet countries can still utilize AI to benefit their own domestic social and economic objectives?
Great question. Great question. The European Union has a law called the AI Act that the European Commission passed last year, and they're trying to implement it now. So that is a law that governs the use of AI within the European community. Now, van der Leyen sent that to the senators in the U.S., and they unanimously declined to use it as a model. And she said, this is helpful. It could be useful, especially in the United States. Now, the problem right now is what you just said. There is what they're calling it an arms race now, an AI arms race, primarily between the United States and China. It's not so much between the United States and China as it is between the AI platforms in the US and the AI platforms in China. Now, the twist is that the AI platforms in China are all owned by the Chinese party, the Communist Party in China. Whereas in the United States, they're independent platforms. Eric Schmidt was the former CEO of Google for many years and is now the head of the Department of Technology and Innovation for the Pentagon in the United States. He travels the world giving talks about AI. He's very knowledgeable. He told me about a year ago that the Americans were ahead of the Chinese by about 2 years. In January 2025, DeepSeek, a Chinese company, came out with an AI version which was infinitely less expensive and used technology which was much more primitive than the platforms we have in the States. And that is when Eric said the Chinese have now caught up to the United States. And the Chinese government has insinuated that they have another AI platform. The most popular one is DeepSeek, but Alibaba, which is their version of Amazon, has its own AI, which of course is owned by the Chinese government. And they say it's more powerful than the ones in the States. So unfortunately, we're now at a huge competition going on between these two sectors. And it's not going to get any less intense in the future. And this is one of the problems that I have, and I think that Pope Leo is having also, because he's inviting different experts of AI to come to the Vatican and speak with him. He's working on a document on AI. How can you convince, leaders of these companies to slow down? Because they're saying, if we slow down, we're going to lose our competitive edge, which is almost nil right now. It's very, very difficult, but I think it is necessary. So there is no universal consensus about how to regulate AI. I think that was the question that you wanted answered. The closest thing we have is the European Union and the AI Act. I also think that Pope Leo XIV's voice is very, very strong because he is a moral leader in the world across borders, all over the world, not just in the West. And so I think that it's important for him to continue speaking about these issues.
Hello. My question was on judgment and liability for situations such as like what Andrew was talking about. Who do you believe should or could be held liable in situations such as that?
There really is no law. This is one of the huge difficulties we have right now. Who is accountable, who is liable? If you don't have a law on the books, then you can't hold someone accountable for breaking those laws because there are no laws. Let me give you a quick example. Last year in the state of New Hampshire, which is not very far from Canada, a young male adult sent out a robocall in the voice of Joe Biden telling people not to vote in the primaries in New Hampshire, but save their vote for the general election in November. Now, if you know anything about the way a president is elected in the United States, you have primaries where the different parties choose their leader, and then you have the general election, which are between the parties. So it's ridiculous to say, don't waste your vote on a primary, save it for the general election. And yet, hundreds of thousands of people did not vote in the primaries because they received that robocall. It was completely fake, but I listened to it, it sounded very, very realistic. The FBI traced down that person and wanted to arrest him, but his lawyer said, what law did he break? And there is no law. Now, I think eventually there will be. It's not very good for a country to allow someone to impersonate the sitting president. Biden was the president at the time, in order to say things which are false. So, but if they don't have a law, you can't arrest the person. So I think right now they're trying, like the U.S. Congress is trying to persuade the tech giants to take responsibility for this technology, but they aren't, and they're not going to. There's a couple of lawsuits now against Mark Zuckerberg. I know that there are lawsuits against Sam Altman. Mark Zuckerberg, of course, the founder of Facebook, which is now called Meta. It's very complex because I'm sure you've all seen terms and conditions to using an AI or using an app, and you click on the box which say yes, I agree. Well, probably you've absolved the company from any wrongdoing by accepting the terms and conditions. So it's going to be very difficult. It's a great question, and I don't have all the answers.
Thank you.
Oh, if there's one thing I'm not, it's very quick, but I'll try my best. I really want to start by appreciating what you've said, because I don't think that you were fear-mongering in ways that I've heard other AI people speak about AIs. I think it was a really balanced talk, and I really appreciate that. I also think it was really practical. It's here. How are we going to do this, and how are we going to do it and try to remain good people? I think that's really helpful. One of the first things I'm going to do when I get back to my office is ask ChatGPT to stop saying that it's reasoning and instead say that it's going to go and check out some people smarter than it and find out what they have to say and see if it'll go. I mean, it stopped using the M dash when I asked it, so fingers crossed. I also have had a lot of thoughts about how AI uses flattery and what that does for us as people. My ChatGPT told me I'm the smartest, I'm the funniest, I've asked the most interesting questions, and it's got me thinking about what that feeds in us as human beings and where we're not getting that in our lives. The big thing that I'm thinking about here, though, today, and the word I haven't heard yet, is capitalism. And yet that's what we've been talking about all day in a way. We've talked, you are less valuable without AI than you are with it. I'm not. I am equally valuable as a whole human being with or without AI. I am more valuable to the capitalist machine with AI. I produce more things if that's my full job as being a human being. And I'm not sure it is, and I want us to constantly think about what it means to be valuable in the world. We've talked about competition, we've talked about AI in the environment, we've talked about trust, we've talked about loneliness, and all of these words, when I hear them, they make me think about capitalism. We are afraid of ChatGPT, we're afraid of AI, but maybe it's this bigger machine that we're trying to feed all the time that's actually harming the earth and harming our relationships between people. I don't know if it's a question. When I think about ethically using AI, I think probably the best thing I can do is try to train my AI to be less of a jerk, and then second, fight capitalism in a bigger way and remember that I like what you said when you said you have to figure out what makes you more valuable as a human than that AI, and try to remember that our value isn't in the number of things we produce. I don't know, maybe my question is sort of around how are we thinking about capitalism within this whole thing. One last thing I just want to say is I also want to encourage us to think about and to be looking for and listening to women who are speaking on this issue. Each of the people you spoke to was male in your presentation, and even in the questions we heard from only 2 people who appear to be women. I'm very curious to go back also and do more research to find out what are women saying about this? What is their take on AI and artificial intelligence, and just get a rounder view on it all. But that isn't to insult what you've said. I just think you were so balanced and so thoughtful in how you presented this, and I really appreciate it. It's a different take than I've heard before. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for those comments. Let me just refer to the term valuable. I used it in a very specific way, but you're absolutely right. There's human beings have an intrinsic value which is transcendental and which is not augmented or decreased by AI. So you're absolutely right. Yes, thank you, Professor. Okay, I've got to run too, but let's try to make sure that AI is used for good, right? Because it's here to stay, and I think it's going to be more and more apparent in society. And instead of doing harm, I think it can do great good, but it depends on how we use it. Thank you once again.
So on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to extend our sincere thanks and gratitude to Father Philip Larrey for sharing your expertise and your insights on such a timely and vital subject. Your engaging presentation was certainly on the implications of artificial intelligence has provided us with a lot of thought to reflect upon, and especially in the context of ethics, I'd say, and our shared responsibility to navigate through these technological advancements in a responsible way. So we truly appreciate your willingness to speak with us today. And thank you for helping us to better understand the profound impact of artificial intelligence on our lives. Thank you very much.